Okay, one of those was good enough for you. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Adriel and it's been ages since I filmed a video. I know that. I've just been like really busy. I have no excuse for how long it took me to get this video out. I have none. I'm not even gonna try to make one. I'm like, oh, I'm working. Oh, I'm doing this. Like, no. I don't have an excuse. I'm just awful. I'm sorry. But I wanted to film something for Halloween. I'm not one of those people who's like crazy about Halloween, despite how I'm not. Like, I like Halloween, but it's definitely not a favorite holiday or anything. But I do like to embrace like creepy things and that kind of thing. I just don't, I'm not like gung-ho Halloween. Like, I feel like a lot of people are, but whatever, it's fine. But I did want to do this video. And I know, here's the deal. I had to go and overcomplicate this whole video idea because I was like, I'll just talk about my favorite scary books. But then I'm like, every single book on this list, you'll see, I've talked about so many times before. And I'm like, okay, don't make it to where all you ever talk about are the same like 5 books. Like, just don't even waste your time or your viewers' time by talking about the same books. So maybe don't do that. So what I'm going to be doing is rating them. It's kind of, well, I'm not going to be getting an average, but it's going to be kind of like my book reviews where I like talk about a couple elements of the story and just kind of like talk about those things. And today I'm only going to be talking about 2 things because I didn't want this video to go on and on. And I'm going to be talking about the memory of it, like how well, like if it was creepy enough that the memory of it, I still think about it now randomly because it was just that creepy that I can't get it out of my head. And things about it just stuck with me. And I'm also going to be talking about the atmosphere of the story. So like the overall, you know, the energy, the vibe, as people say. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm crooked. Is that better? Those are the 2 elements that I'm going to be talking about in these books. Now, I will go ahead and say these are not all of the scary books that I could think of. I just didn't want this video to go on and on. There are a couple more that I could have selected, but just I got the main ones, I will say. And another thing is some of these are classic horror books, like classic, and some of them are not. Some of them just kind of, I felt like it would be interesting to talk about in the same context as I talk about some of these classic horror things. So with that being said, let's go ahead and begin the video. We're going to start with one. Let's start with this one. We're going to start with one that I've talked about a couple times, but it's been a little bit since I have talked about it. And I haven't talked that much about it, but I have mentioned it. If you've been watching for a little while, you know that. And that book is The Elementals by Michael McDowell. I read this in school for one of my English classes. Can't remember which one. Not that that matters. But this book, I'm going to try to tell you guys what the books are about. Unless they're classics, because there's some classics on here and I figure you already know what they are. But if they're not classics, I'm going to kind of try to tell you what they're about. This is about a young family who they live on the Alabama Gulf Coast. And there are these Victorian houses. And there's like, I think 3 houses, but the 3rd house is the one that is just got something going on with it. And it's like full of sand. And it's the creepiest thing. It's like, there's nothing scary about sand, but this book somehow freaked me out with the thought of sand because the house is just full of sand. I don't even know. It's just weird. The 3rd house, it says, is mysteriously and slowly being buried beneath an enormous dune of blindingly white sand. Like, it's like really white sand, not like the kind of like off-white tan color that sand actually is, but like just white. It says, though uninhabited, the 3rd house is not empty. Inside, something deadly lies in wait. So, these people bring their they grew up there and now they're bringing their families to this place for whatever reason, and now they're telling their kids and stuff about the 3rd house, and of course people end up going into the 3rd house. But this book is just really good and I quite enjoyed it, and no one talks about it, so I'm talking about it because if you haven't read this and you like horror and you like creepy things and you like Southern Gothic type stuff, this needs to be on your radar. So for memory, as far as how often I remember it, I didn't tell you this. I'm only rating them out of 3. So 1 is 2 is okay, and then 3 is like great. Like that's the best it can get. So for memory for this one, I gave it a 2 because I don't like lay around in bed at night thinking about this all that often. Like there have been a couple times over the years that I've read it. I think this was probably about 3 years ago that I read this, and I still think about it, but not as often as some others on this list. So that's why this one has got a 2 for how well that it made me remember it. And this is not remembering the story. I'm saying how creepy it was, that it was so creepy that it makes me think about how creepy it was just randomly. Just like, oh, I read that book that time and that was horrifying. This has that factor, so it's a 2. But it just didn't, it didn't like get to me. I didn't feel scarred after putting this down. Like, that's what I'm saying by memory. Like, are you scarred by the memories of the mental images the book put in your head? If not, it's not 3. And with this one, as far as atmosphere goes, I gave it a 2. To be fair, though, I don't quite remember exactly the full atmosphere because it has been a while since I've read it. But I do remember thinking that the atmosphere was pretty good. I just feel like if the atmosphere was really stellar, I'd still remember it. Like some of the books on this list, that I still remember how the atmosphere made me feel. And I still remember how reading it made me feel. And with this one, I just remember that I quite liked it. So I gave the atmosphere a 2 because the element with the sand was just really, like, really good. It could, the creepy factor, just like the atmosphere. Like, you know when you're reading something scary, it's got that, like, dark atmosphere and you just know. This was that, but, like, not that intensely, so it didn't get the full 3. Also, I'm not gonna get an average because it's just 2 numbers, so this one got 2 2s. Okay, for the next book, I guess I'll just go in order that I have them here. This one is one that I've talked about so many times on this channel. No one's surprised. It's Dracula again. And I've kind of already said some of this, but it's okay. That's why I didn't want to do this like the traditional way, because I've talked about some of these books so much. But for the memory for this book, I'm giving it a 3 because it's a classic for a reason. Like, we all remember this story. Like, you don't forget what Dracula is about. Like, everyone knows. Even if you haven't read it, you know Dracula is about a vampire. So I gave it a 3 because why not? And also, I want to move on from this one quickly because I've talked about this book just too much on the channel. And also for atmosphere, I'm giving it a 3 because this book just has it. It just has it from page 1 until the final page. It has it. It has it. This is what I'm talking about when I say, like, oh, the creepy atmosphere to the story. It can't get much better than this. It can't. I'm just not convinced that it can get much more atmospheric than this. This is so good. And now I have heard people say, and I kind of agree, that after the first, like, chapter or 2, or the first, like, part, the atmosphere kind of dips because it gets less scary. I totally understand that. Just for me, the atmosphere persisted. I can understand if people think that it dipped off. I can see why they'd say that. I'm going to have to disagree, though. From the first page to the last page, I loved the atmosphere this was giving me. So that got 2 3s. I'm going to take a little break, but I'm going to cut up some of the classics and some of the books that you might expect to see on this list and talk about one that I haven't mentioned in a while. It's one of my favorite books, I think, ever. And the cover is so pretty. Like, it's just so, like, okay, we've all seen this, but we've all heard about it. It's The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. And you might be wondering, why is that on this list? Because I didn't want them all to be classic horror novels and just basic horror. Like, this is like dark fantasy. It's Leigh Bardugo. That's kind of her thing. But this is about a girl named, I'm about to have to summarize what it's about. Here we go. She goes, okay, this is going to be terrible, but I'm going to try to get across the main points. It's about a girl named Alex, or Galaxy, and she goes to Yale, and she was raised in Los Angeles. She dropped out of school, and then she went into, like, she's had, like, a really hard life, and she was the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide, and people say that she's, quote, thrown her life away. But she can see ghosts, or they're not called ghosts. I think they're called, they call them grays? Yeah, they're called grays instead of, like, ghosts. But that's what they are. She can see those spirits, and then there's, like, all this dark magic, and it's that dark academia. They're at Yale. Everything's all dark and magical, and every page just feels dangerous, in a way. So, for memory, I gave this book a 2 because I don't think about this book as often as I used to. The further I get from my initial read, the less I think about it. Even though I'm really excited about book 2 because I heard she's working on book 2, like, as I speak, and there will be a reading vlog on that one when that comes out because I'm real excited. But anyway, so the further I get from my initial read, the less I think about this book, which is sad. And I still think about it, but when I first read this, I thought about it all the time. But now it dipped to a 2 because I don't think about it as much. It's not a 1 because it doesn't like never cross my mind. It's just not like it used to be. So 2 for memory. And there's some aspects of it that were just really creepy that I've completely forgotten about that I'm remembering as I kind of say it now. That just completely slipped my mind. But I'm just going to go ahead and give it a 2 for memory. And for atmosphere, I gave it a 2.5 because I didn't want to give it a 3 because it just, like I said that the atmosphere was like on. But there were like, I don't know. It had, and I guess this is in the context of this video. Like if this were a Dark Academia video, this would be a 3. But the fact that this is like a Halloween kind of creepy, it's not going to get a 3 because it just has a Dark Academia feel. And that inherently isn't going to give me 3 on the creepy vibe. So this book was kind of at a disadvantage being on this list. But I did want to include some books in this kind of area. And here's another one that I kind of like was hesitant to put on this list just because, oh, sorry. This one got a 2 and a 2.5, just as a recap. So this is another one, as I was saying, that I was kind of hesitant to put on this list just because it is so different than some of the others. But I figured, just do it. Like, honestly, there are no rules to this. I just made this idea up. Like, all these rules. I'm trying to create structure in something that is just, it's just a video. So that book is one that I did a reading vlog on. The Maidens, and I still don't want to say his last name because I really don't want to butcher it, and I've heard it a couple different ways, and I'm just afraid. But I hit myself with the book in the face. I don't know if you just saw it. But also the sticky note won't stick to the material that this book is made out of. So I'd say this one is about another like Dark Academia thing. And it's about a teacher, and they suspect that he's killing his students and stuff like that. I've talked about this book so many times, I feel like, on this channel. As far as memory goes, I actually gave this one a 1 just because when I first read it, like let me say it like this. When I heard what this book was about, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, that book is going to rock the whole reading world. Like for me, it's going to just change. It's going to skew all my reading. It's going to make me want to read nothing but thrillers for the rest of the year. I can feel it coming. I was so wrong. I thought about it more before I read it than after, which is just never a good thing. So it got a 1 as far as memory goes, because I just never think about this. Like every now and then I'll think about pine cones, or I'll see a pine cone. If you've read this, you know. I'll see a pine cone and I'll go, oh, the Maidens. But like other than that, I don't really think about it. But if I see a pine cone, yeah, I will think about this. And atmosphere, I gave a 2 because it was it's same thing with Ninth House. It's not going to get a 3 for the Dark Academia feel. It's automatically at a disservice just because it's in this video. But again, figured I'd include some of these Dark Academias because they are good for this time of year, regardless of if it's like spooky or anything. Like it's good for this time of year. So these are just, honestly, this video is just like a bunch of recommendations again for these books. So that's why these are on here. Okay, now another classic basic Adriel. Doesn't get more basic than this. Well, actually it does, but I'm not even there yet. Pretty basic Adriel, another book I've talked about a million times, a book that I probably should reread this spooky season. Frankenstein. We all knew this was going to be on here. If you didn't, you're new here. So for memory, as far as like how often I think about this book, you know I gave it a 3 because I think about that monster often. Like I know it's weird, but it's kind of not because it's one of my favorite books. So I think about Frankenstein's monster often. I think about this story, and I think about Victor, and I think about his family, and I think about just how creepy that situation is, and it just gets to me often. And I also, this book has like this deeper meaning of just like playing God. I think about that, this book, it takes me down that road, and so it spirals into this whole like moral philosophical conversation in my head based on this book, like coming from this. That's why I had to give this one the highest score I could, just because it makes me think just deeper than like, oh, that was creepy and now it stuck with me. Like, no, it stuck with me because it like it had something to say. It wasn't just creepy for the sake of creepy. It had things to say, which I have respect for that, but I also just enjoy any book that does that, just because like, what else are we reading for, you know? And then also atmosphere, surprisingly, I gave it a 2.5. I'm not sure exactly why I give it 2.5. I think because I did this like a little bit ago. For atmosphere, what is it about it? Some parts of this aren't as scary as you think. That's what it is. Like some parts of it are like, ooh, that's scary. And then like it kind of throws you because it's got all these different people telling, like it's a story within a story within a story. And that like, it's like each time you start over, you have to reacclimate and get reintroduced into like the atmosphere. And it's like here's a new narrator. Here's this situation. Like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's like you have to continually get regrounded in the story, and that kind of takes away from the like. It's like pulling the magical veil off and then putting a new one on. It's like here's the new one, and it's just as creepy, but you have to get used to it. It throws you for a little bit. So 2.5, so like almost 3 because it's still creepy. So that's how I feel about that. So this one got a 3 and a 2.5. And for the Maidens, I don't think I recapped. I'm a mess. This video is a mess. I'm sorry. I haven't been back in a while. The Maidens got a 1 and a 2. This one, Frankenstein, got a 3 and a 2.5. And you thought it was going to get 2 3s. See, I had to keep you, like, guessing sometimes. Also, this next one, I think is pretty basic. I'm saving the most basic for last. And you already know what that is. Come on. Well, you might not. So, Misery, Stephen King, a book I've talked about before. There's a whole reading blog on it. I'll link it because it's one of my favorites that I've ever done. And I was really proud of it. So for this book, you guys, I don't think that I know I've raved about it, but I don't think that I've fully illustrated how much I love this book. This book, like, let me just talk about memory. I think about this book all the time. Like, I know that's kind of weird, but not really. I think about this book so often, like it's ridiculous. Maybe it's because the main character is a writer and I'm also a writer, and so I put myself in his shoes. But like this crazy fan has kidnapped him because he gets into a car accident and she pulls him out of the car, and it happens to be like her favorite author. So she takes him to her house and she locks him there, and she's like beating him and abusing him, and it's like this whole, like, it's horrifying. And I've said this before, but paranormal horror is scary to a degree. But really what scares me is thriller, like psychological stuff. That freaks me out. This kind of thing. This is scary. And like the images that this book put in my head, like they stick with me. I can vividly see them if I close my eyes. Just the imagery. Like these, like trauma. Honestly, this book was just traumatizing to read. You already know it's a 3 for memory because it just sticks with me. And if you read it, it might not stick with you. I don't know. I can't make any promises about any of these books, but I will say that if this book doesn't stick with you in some way, because it's got some images that are not typical of, like, I don't even want to say too much, but it sticks with me every day. I think about this book, like literally not a week goes by that I don't think about this book. It's that deep. So for atmosphere, the atmosphere of, like, here's the deal with this one. This one's got a different atmosphere than every other book on this list. There's the dark academia atmosphere. There's the frightening horror atmosphere. This one has the I'm just nervous what's going to happen next atmosphere. Like the I'm scared for my life atmosphere. That comes from page 1 all the way to the very last page. Like, I'm afraid. Like, I'm afraid for him. I'm afraid for myself for some reason, just reading it, even though I'm at a safe distance. I'm a reader. This is not my life. Like, you're afraid for this man for all 300 and something pages. For every page, you're flipping, terrified for him. You never feel safe for him. You're constantly just rooting for him to be able to get out of the house. And you're just terrified. And just to have tension that lasts for the course of a whole novel, that's mastery of the storytelling craft. I can't even explain how impressive that, like, you have tension that went from the tension because of the same thing. Not like you're creating all these tense moments. Like the same thing is creating this much tension. And for me, it never got old. It never went away. It never died down. That's why I was able to read this so fast, because I was like on edge for 330 something pages, you guys. Or 340, however long it is. That's how long I was on edge. Like, couldn't put it down. When I did put it down, I didn't want to. Near the end, the pacing kind of started to get on my nerves because it started acting kind of weird. But the atmosphere never died. So that's why this book is going to get 2 3s from me in terms of memory and atmosphere. And then the last, which isn't one book, which isn't one short story, which isn't one poem. You know what it is. It's this man's entire body of work. It's Edgar Allan Poe. If you know, you know. So for memory, as far as how well his stories stick around, his short stories, his poems, I gave it a whopping 3 because it just doesn't get much better than that. Like, I think about The Raven all the time. In fact, I'm going to share this with you guys. I'm such an Edgar Allan Poe weeb. Back when I was out living at my old apartment, one of the main things I did in my bedroom, I printed out a picture, for real, you guys, of a raven, and I put it above my bedroom door because it's talking about the raven above your chamber door. That's how much his work is effective. Like, it's on the wall. There's a raven above my chamber door. Seriously. Like, I wish I could show you. It happened. And I still think about Telltale Heart. Like, who doesn't think of, even if you haven't read, like, a lot of his stuff, like, if you've read Telltale Heart and the heartbeat, like, beating, like, come on, that freaked you out. Come on, and you thought about it afterward. That's a 3. That's a 3 on the how well you remember it. It's a classic for a reason. I think it's hard to say that a classic's not memorable because it's a classic for a reason. Like, we've remembered it. We've not let it go because it's been too good to let it just go. So that's a 3 as far as memory goes. And atmosphere, I also gave a 3 because nothing beats the energy that you get from a Poe short story, poem, whatever. Nothing beats it. Nothing beats it. Like, there's some short stories that aren't 3s. Like, what's it called? The one about the balloon that for some reason I can't think of the name of right now. The one about the hot air balloon. That one's not, like, the balloon hoax. Yeah, the balloon hoax isn't, like, inherently scary. Like, there's some that aren't. But really, when Poe, I don't think he's trying. When Poe tries to go there, it goes there. So this man knew how to create atmosphere through words, which, again, just solid mastery of storytelling. Impressive. Love it. There are a lot of books written by men on this list, so I'm just not realizing that. But, I mean, look, it is what it is, and these are great books. So, 2 3s for Poe. Of course, no one's surprised. So, that wraps up I'm Crooked Again. So, that wraps up my creepy video, my talking about books that are creepy. I didn't rate them. I talked about some favorites of mine that I've always talked about. I didn't tell you guys. I didn't just, oh, here's another book like that basic. I really thought about that, but I was like, that's not going to be, no. Like, we have to complicate this a little bit just so it's not the same books. But it is. But, like, I feel like this way kind of made it okay because, you know, I talked about 2 specific elements of the stories. Like, in my eyes, I made it okay. I hope it was okay. I had fun filming this, and it's in my first video back after a long time, and I'm really happy that this was what I got to come back to. So, I will see you guys next time. Hopefully not in a month. Also, all my social media is linked in the description. My Instagram, my personal Instagram, and then also my Bookstagram, where I just talk about books, and then my Goodreads, and then my Storygraph, which I don't really use that often. Like, I've just been really bad about Goodreads and Storygraph, so yeah, I haven't finished the book all month. I've been real busy, you guys. But it's okay. I'll finish a book at some point. Maybe I'll even do a review on it. When I finish, you'll know, because I'll probably do a review on it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.